Of the roughly 1,000 Ozempic patients I've taken care of over the last few years, today I'm going to share with you 2 specific cases I've taken care of recently. And then I'll explain these 2 crucially important weight loss charts that everyone needs to be aware of before they begin their weight loss journey. And finally, I'm going to explain why I believe in 20 years, maybe even sooner, Ozempic and all other GLP-1 agonists being used solely for weight loss purposes will ultimately go down as one of the worst medical decisions in modern healthcare history. The reality is, if you're interested in weight loss and you've exhausted all other options, sure, try these GLP-1 agonists. But if you're interested in long-term weight loss that provides an overall net positive in your health compared to the negatives that are brought forth in these medications that I'll explain today with real-world examples, leave these medications at the door. And we can totally agree to disagree.
Let's agree to disagree.
Just so you know, I am a board-certified practicing physician. If you think what I'm saying is completely false, leave it in the comments and let's have a discussion. The first patient encounter I want to tell you about was about a woman in her early 50s who came to the hospital for an unrelated issue regarding Ozempic. The fact that she takes the medication came up during the history and physical, and I began to ask her a few questions about it. She said she had been taking it for about 10 months. She was not a diabetic, and she had lost 25 pounds. She was acquiring Ozempic from one of these online medical boutiques.
Not a great plan.
And she told me, though, even though she was happy with the 25-pound weight loss, she was going to stop taking the medication next month. Not because the 25-pound weight loss was her ultimate goal, but it was a completely different reason, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. But I want to tell you about the other case as well. He was a middle-aged man that I saw. He was actually a friend of mine. He's in his mid-40s, and I see him a couple of times a year. This last time that I saw him, however, he had lost a tremendous amount of weight, and I looked at him and I was like, man, this is impressive. What have you been doing? And maybe, I guess, with a little bit of ignorance in my mind, I was thinking as a dude, he was probably going to say, well, I changed my diet. I was hitting the gym. He didn't say any of that. He looked at me, and you can tell while he wasn't embarrassed, he certainly didn't say it with a bunch of pride. He said Ozempic. But then he told me he had actually lost a lot more weight, but it began to put weight back on, and it was for a completely different reason than the first woman who was coming off the Ozempic next week, and I'll explain that too. But first, to understand the reason behind why this guy was having so much trouble, you need to understand these charts. The first chart that I'm going to tell you about is basically the standard weight loss chart over time. Basically, people start at a certain weight, and as time goes on, during the diet and exercise, they will begin to lose weight. That's the traditional chart. Now let me show you what happens when you're on Ozempic and why everybody wants this medication and they want it right now. It's clear that for everybody who's on Ozempic or any of these other GLP-1 agonists, they lose more total body weight. It's actually quite impressive, but there is a specific reason, and that reason is not necessarily a good thing. One of the reasons the traditional weight loss avenue doesn't lose as much weight is because oftentimes it's coupled with diet and exercise. While they do lose weight, they oftentimes gain a small amount of muscle mass and bone density because of supplements, vitamins, and weight training that they're doing. So they lose fat, they gain a little bit of muscle mass. The overall net weight loss isn't as profound because oftentimes there's some associated muscle mass gain with it as well. The main problem with Ozempic is even though you lose fat, it's not the only thing that you're losing. You are losing bone mass. You are losing muscle mass. Heck, there's even people losing their hair. In the total weight loss column, you are losing way more. And since by volume, muscle weighs more than fat, since you are losing muscle and fat, proportionally, in the end, after you've lost all your weight, you are actually more obese than when you started because of the amount of bone and muscle mass that you have lost. And here's the problem with women on Ozempic after 40. Good luck getting that back. It's just not going to happen. A few months ago, I made a complete video about this next chart that I'm talking about. The data out there that shows after your 20s, you gain almost a pound a year every year for the rest of your life. You are getting more obese as time goes by. Also, you are getting more deconditioned as time goes by. You naturally lose bone mass and muscle mass. Unless you are aggressively trying to preserve it with weight training, you naturally lose bone mass and muscle mass as you get older. And even with weight training, you still lose it. It's just a process of aging. Now the problem is, at some point these lines are going to intersect, and in that video that I did a few months ago, once you get past this point of no return, it's over. Your quality of life is done. Healthcare will keep you alive, but you are basically too deconditioned to support your body weight. In most women in the healthcare setting, I see it in their late 70s and 80s. They are super sharp upstairs, but they just can't support their body anymore. For men, it's the same thing if they make it that long, but honestly, most of them die from heart attacks and strokes before that, so I don't see it as often, but it's really the same thing for those men that don't succumb to coronary artery disease. At some point, they just can't support their weight anymore, and it's over. And here's the problem with Ozempic. Everybody who takes Ozempic is going to left shift this chart. and you're going to reach that point of no return much sooner than you would have. So my fear, and I completely hope that I'm wrong, but my fear is that unless things change in 10 years, 20 years, whereas I used to see people in their late 70s and 80s becoming too deconditioned, I'm going to see them in their late 60s or early 60s, maybe even worse in their 50s. It sounds extreme, but the data shows that's what's going to happen if you extrapolate these graphs out. So let me get back to the first woman in the example. I talked to her about her Ozempic use, and she told me the reason she was coming off of it is because she could already feel herself getting weaker. And I asked her specifically, did this boutique that provided her the Ozempic tell her about these side effects of muscle loss and the need to do resistance weight training? And she said no. Now this next 15 seconds is for all the practitioners out there who are providing Ozempic or all these other medicines. If you don't tell your people up front that you prescribe this to, that they need to diet and exercise and weight train every single day, that is legit 100% malpractice. 100%. So yes, the first person had lost weight, but she already felt herself becoming weaker, so she's coming off of it. The second gentleman that I told you about, my friend, the same thing. Nothing was told to him about the need to weight train, but his issue was when I was asking him why did he think he was losing weight, and he said it just made him not hungry anymore. He was satiated quicker, and he kind of joked instead of eating 2 cheeseburgers, he would now just eat 1. That's the problem. He's taking Ozempic, but continues his crappy lifestyle. And then what happens is the reason he has gained weight, like when I told you at the beginning of the video, why he had already gained some of the weight back since starting Ozempic, is because he was taking it during its utmost popularity, and for a while he wasn't able to get it. And that's the point. These Ozempic, all these medications are like hair loss medicine for men. The reality is every day I wake up with less and less hair. I don't want to go bald. No man wants to go bald. So there's all these products out there. Yeah, they might work, but as soon as you stop taking them, your hair loss returns, and it returns with it at a much quicker pace. That's why I don't use anything. It's the same thing with weight loss. The moment you stop taking it without significant lifestyle changes, all that weight comes back at a more aggressive pace, but all the bone and muscle wasting that you have lost doesn't come back. It's gone, and without significant efforts, it's gone forever. And basically, after your 50s and 60s, nobody's going to get that back. I would actually argue it's almost better to be obese and have the muscle tone as you get later in life than to be thin and have significant osteoporosis and no muscle mass, because then you're just lying on the bed helpless. If you choose to take these medicines, here's how you do it. Get on them with the idea that you're only going to be on it for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Give yourself a timeline and use that time as a way to completely change your lifestyle. So by the time you come off of it in 12 months, you don't need to diet because you're no longer consuming those crappy foods. You are exercising every day, and that hopefully you can continue to do that and no longer need the Ozempic. That's the only way Ozempic will be successful. Sorry for the camera change. I hope this video was insightful. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you next time.